Okay. So yeah, like I said, we're working with new technologies for collecting data, and specifically we developed this multi-sensor platform that is called Bsafe-360. So just to give you an overview, and we had an increase in ridership, in daily ridership from 2008 to 2018 of about 116%. And nowadays we have, from the last report, from the city report, we had more than 1,100 miles of bike lanes. And with this increase, and we are also seeing an increasing ridership during the pandemic in 2020. So for example, for city bike, we had, even though we had the pandemic, we only experienced 5% of ridership drop compared to other modes of transportation. So for example, for vehicles and transit, we did experience a higher drop. So for transit, we were between 60 and 80% drop comparing both years, 2019 and 2020. Other characteristics from city bike that we have is that for now, we have 36 new stations and a bicycle fleet of 20,000. So this shows that the ridership will tend to increase in 2020. We also see that on the data itself. So the trend is to increase. And with that, we also see that for fatalities, we didn't actually perform that well as we were expecting for the Vision Zero regarding bicycles, because we see that in 2014, we started at 21, then we have a drop, then we start increase again. 2018, of course, was the best year, but 2019, we had an increase again. And 2020, even though we had less cars in the streets, we did see a high number of fatalities. So all of this kind of makes us have this question mark on bicycle, how they behave and how these vehicles are interacting with these bicycles. But we still lack some of the data to kind of understand these aspects, especially in safety, but also in other aspects. So for example, in equity as well, because for now, City Bike shows an example that we have 68% of male users instead of female users. And so we kind of try to understand how that happens, why this happens, why do we have this type of users riding more. We have some literature saying that it's because of perceived safety. And this literature kind of shows for this type of data that, so we do have some methods currently to kind of try to understand this data, but they...
You were stopped, your freedom of movement was impeded, and you were stopped for the purposes of a regulatory action that the United States government says is important, right? Which is, we can't have this type of agriculture coming into New York City. The same principle applied to our regulatory stops concerning entering New York State without filling out the New York State Traveler Advisory Form. So throughout the course of our every 10th vehicle that was stopped, and as you can see, we didn't target out-of-state plates. Most of the plates that were stopped, 52% of them were out of state, and 48% were New York State. So we had a very large volume of New York State vehicles stopped, just as much as out-of-state vehicles that were stopped, right? And then, of course, while we were doing these stops, we also issued about 92,000 masks. So that was very important. So this was a very, very kind of important public safety procedure that we were following during the pandemic. And for us, the important part of this was that this was not deemed to be a criminal stop. This was not about catching people to arrest them and charge them with the crime. Out of all the...
Easier to scale. So I'm going to show you the sensor itself in a little bit. But the objective of the sensor is exactly that. So you can kind of interact with different platforms. So for example, you can interact with your smartphone, with your smartwatch, so you can collect health data. You can interact with connected vehicles, infrastructure. And from that, you can get different data to address different aspects of all that involve cycling. It can be safety, it can be for infrastructure planning as well. So we can have a warning system, we can have it used in planning and policy making, we can use for research specifically, and also incident management. We can also use for the cyclist itself, that can choose the route that they're gonna do, which one is safer. And we can also study the cycling behavior itself. So for example, what speed the cyclist is going and where the cycling is turning, etc. Because now we don't actually have a specific trajectory unless we pay for it from the crowdsourced fitness apps. And not only that, we can actually send this device to several places. And right now we actually have it in several places. We do have devices here in New York City, but we also have it in Denver, in Shanghai, and in Brazil, 2 different cities of Brazil. So we can collect data from several places in the world and then compare this and see at what point the cycling behavior or the safety of the cyclists are being affected by the culture itself, how the cycling culture is in that country, or how much is affected by the infrastructure. And this is the device itself. So as you can see here, it's right now, it's the size of we use this case that we use to put smartphones. So it's basically that size. We do plan in make it shorter. So it uses a Raspberry Pi microcomputer, 2 ultrasonic sensors to collect the distance, a GPS receiver, and we also use accelerometer and gyroscope to understand acceleration and position of the bike, and also a temperature sensor. So right now it's about $200 per unit. It's portable, customizable, and it can, like I mentioned, it can be applied to a variety of different, you can have different fields applying this sensor.
2-minute warning, Suzana.
Thank you. So basically how it works is that you attach to the bicycle. Right now, we have planned to expand it, but you attach it to the bicycle and it will measure the distance from the cyclist to the vehicle. And it also collects the trajectory, acceleration, and the angles of the bicycle to kind of like see where in the bike lane this cyclist is. So it's pretty simple. Then after that, it just goes to the computer, we clean it, process, and then make all the visualizations. So here I just put some sample data real quick so you can see kind of like how it looks like. Yeah, and we also have kind of the trajectory that we did so far for testing this sensor. So basically this is in J Street, and you can see that we can kind of measure this for each point of the trajectory and even in real time. And here it's kind of like the graphics showing examples of trajectories from the collected data. And you can see here, you can see the trajectory of the bicycles with the points where you have cars getting too close, less than 3 feet. In this case, we consider unsafe distance. And we can have the speed time series over here. So we can identify actually from this hard braking and where near misses happens. And here's just some sample results. We had actually average speeds for all the records at 7.12 miles per hour, and below safe distance, below 3 feet, we actually see that, of course, people tend to slow down. So we have 5.46 miles per hour, and when at safe distance, they tend to go a little bit higher. Yeah, so just conclude real quick. So we just wanted to show the device and the potentials that it has. It's been stable collecting this data, and it can be used as an all-in-one data collection tool. And the dashboard that we created, it can be adapted to different facilities and different variables. And we plan to use this to help fill the gap existing in non-motorized vehicle safety research, and also help all the agencies to improve the efficiency on decision-making process. This is just some equity project that NYU has itself that is with the high school summer interns, and they also work in this project. So they were looking at the stress level. And lastly, but not least, I just wanted to invite anyone in this meeting that wants to help us collecting data and, you know, get to know a little bit more about the project, just to register. And if it's okay with Rob, I can leave the link on the chat as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. Great presentation.